There's no major spoilers in this video. There may be footage of rooms you've never drafted, but if that's something you'd rather avoid, feel free to just listen. The number one tip is to focus on seeing new rooms. If you're feeling stuck or frustrated with blueprints, this is by far the best solution. There are so many riddles in this puzzle box of a game. There are even more solutions to those riddles, and in fact, just about none of them are actually required to beat the game. Now, as you're drafting a room, you might read the description and think, that seems weird or that seems unhelpful. But the way Blueprints is designed, they're trying to simplify the amount of text that you're reading. There is so much more to every single room than just their simple description. And in fact, learning the full potential of each room is part of the fun of this puzzle box. So if you focus on seeing new rooms, not only will you find plenty of answers, but you'll especially find new leads. Related to this is tip number 2, which is to focus on building the biggest house. Sometimes Blueprints feels like there's a lot of luck or RNG involved. And yes, to an extent there is, but you can mitigate it. The more that you play, the better you get at building your house. Think of it like this. If you focus on size, that gives you plenty of opportunities to throw away dead ends, which means that as you progress later in the ranks, you're way more likely to continue to have rooms with paths, which means that your run isn't going to end. That'll also make rare rooms more likely to show up because the common rooms are going to be out of your drafting pool for the day. I've seen a lot of reviews from users online who get frustrated with the luck, but consider your favorite trading card for a second. Yeah, there is luck involved when you're dueling somebody. The order in which you draw your cards can determine whether or not that you win, but that doesn't mean it's just a game of luck. There are professionals who play Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering as their career, and that's because they think of ways to consistently win, and they brainstorm ways to mitigate the variance. So again, if you focus on building the biggest house, that will help you tremendously with your days, and it will reduce a lot of the feel-bad RNG that people seem to think there is. Next up is tip number 3. There is no rush. I know the blueprints can feel frustrating. A common complaint that I see on Steam reviews is that people have finally figured out some solution to a puzzle, but then they don't end up seeing the room to solve the puzzle. Or maybe they're having an amazing run, but then they run out of keys and they're unable to keep moving forward. Well, yes, it can be annoying, but consider this for a second. It's really not a big deal. You can just do it again the next day or the day after that. The way that Blueprints unfolds as a puzzle box is that no two people are ever going to have the same experience. You are going to encounter different puzzles and different solutions to those puzzles in way different ways than other people. So it's not worth comparing yourself to others or how fast they beat the game or even focusing entirely on one outcome to a puzzle. So again, there's absolutely no rush. Blueprints is so much more about the journey than it is about the destination. And so being able to take a step back and say, you know what, I may not have actually succeeded in the one particular thing I want to do, but there's always the next day, or there's always some new puzzle or some new lead that I discovered on this run. That's going to make you feel so much better playing the game. Tip number 4, don't be afraid of red rooms. If you've noticed, there are certain types of rooms that have a category or a theme. So purple rooms are bedrooms, garden-related rooms are green, hallways are orange, and red rooms are red. These all have a negative downside to them, like the chapel, which causes you to lose 1 coin, or the lavatory that's just a dead end that does absolutely nothing. At first, these red rooms can feel very scary because they do have a downside attached to them, but consider this, most red rooms have a lot of pathways to build from that are so much more powerful than the downside that might blind you to picking them. For example, the chapel losing 1 coin is really weak. I mean, sure, it's annoying to lose money here and there, but that is an easy cost to pay for having 2 branching paths, and in fact, if you have no coins at all, it's totally free. Consider the passageway, which costs 2 full gems to have the entire 4-way spread. That is still a really good room, and 2 gems is decently expensive. You don't have to pay any gems at all for red rooms, so don't be afraid of them. They are a very powerful tool to help you build your way to success. Honestly, the best way to mitigate the bigger downsides of some of these rooms is just to draft them late in the day. Archives can be really difficult to play around. It obscures the information of one room throughout the rest of your day, but if you draft it later on in the day, there's not that many rooms that are going to affect you negatively. And honestly, even on the days where you have to draft them early, sure, they might be frustrating or they might even lead to your loss, but hey, you can always just play again the next day. There's a lot of charm to red rooms that I think a lot of players overlook because they're so averse to the downsides of them. The upsides are way more than worth it. Tip number 5 is to save your key keys and your gems for the later ranks. In particular, I see a lot of new players just busting their gems right away on the early ranks of Mount Holly, and while sometimes that's the play if it's going to open up a new direction for you, that's not always the best solution. Oftentimes, rooms that have a lot of gems are going to be inherently rooms that have a lot of doorways and pathways to exit from, so you really don't want to be in a position where you're late up on the ranks, but you're running into dead ends, or you don't have a lot of ways to continue to grow your house in meaningful ways. The same is true for keys. Rooms are way more likely to be locked on the north sides of the house as opposed to the southern sides, so oftentimes debating whether or not this one little door in a particular way is worth the key is actually an interesting part of the game's design. Tip number 6, drafting is hard, so don't get discouraged. I made a whole video on my own strategy and my mindset when I'm going through a day that I think is really great for newer players, because it's really easy when you start off to think, oh, the game is just RNG, or it's hard to know that your own choices might be detrimental. 8 years ago, I played the very first build of the game. Back when it was called The Quest, I was one of 4 people to do so. In fact, I've got a whole video on the behind the scenes of Blueprints, if that fascinates you as well. Jokes and self-promotion aside, it is really important to remember that even players like me still can have a hard time debating between certain choices. It's not crystal clear, and unlike a game like Balatro, it's not always apparent what a winning strategy is because you don't necessarily know what your goals are. That's why you shouldn't be results oriented. Just enjoy the process for what it is and learn as you do. I might recommend taking screenshots at the end of each of your days so you can see what choices you've made in the past and then compare them to yourself in the future and be blown away that, yeah, with knowledge, you can become a much better drafter. This ties real nicely with tip number 7, play with a notebook. There are so many visual cues and puzzles that are interspersed throughout Blueprints in very subtle ways, but the more you play, the more rooms you see, the bigger the house, you'll start to understand the meta trends that permeate throughout Mount Holly's estate. Believe me when I say that there's no such thing as taking too many notes. Blueprints is expertly designed in that there are so many leads and strands to chase, and so if you write down your notes, you'll never fully lose track of an interesting thing. Oftentimes when I'm playing the game, I'll hyperfixate on a particular solution to a puzzle, and then I'll encounter something brand new, and that new thing will be exciting and take up my time and effort, but thank goodness I wrote down the notes earlier because I would have easily forgotten what my original plan for the day was. Tip number 8 is to play with a friend, and I'm not talking about streaming or watching people, although I'm going to be streaming it all throughout this month, so of course you can come say hi, but I'm actually talking about in-person discussions with someone who's a good friend or a significant other. I've seen so many positive reviews of the game talking about how husbands and wives are going at it. Maybe one person is taking control of a day, making blueprint decisions, while the other person is jotting down notes and maybe bouncing ideas. There is so much to say about that dynamic of one extra person who's got a different perspective, who might see things in a different way, and therefore come up with a different solution to something that maybe you would have never considered. I would guarantee that many people who had a bad review or encounter with this game would have enjoyed it so much more with one extra friend to give them a push in a certain direction or to bounce ideas and theorize, because let me tell you, there is so much lore to theorize about. And the beautiful thing about a real life friend playing it with you is that you're not gonna have to worry about spoilers the same way you would on Reddit or on Discord. I would be so cautious, even of other YouTube videos. I'm doing my best to not spoil you because I care so much about this game, but I would be extremely cautious. Tip number 9, there's no such thing as a wasted day. Even if there are no longer any rooms that you can build from, you can still explore the house. Some of my best breakthroughs have come about in days where I'm just going through the house looking for little items and clues and things that I may have missed, because while I was first playing earlier in the day, all I was focused on was building, building, building. Now a different part of my mind can take over. Blueprints does have permanent upgrades to your house, though I won't spoil what they are or how to get them, and there are plenty of rooms that are entirely designed to make the next day even better than the day before that. And even just on a very subtle level, the more that you play Blueprints, the more that you expose yourself to the rooms, the layouts, the visuals, the more you'll have a chance to really uncover and have breakthroughs with the major puzzles of the game. Blueprints is the sort of labyrinth that gets better the more that you dwell on it, and perhaps you're in the shower having some of your best ideas, and all of a sudden you've come up with something that you are dying to test out. That is the joy of a puzzle box like Blueprints. And that idea ties into the final tip for you. Blueprints is a journey. I've talked about this in little ways earlier throughout this video, but the truth is this is so much more than any other puzzle game you've ever played. I've seen a lot of positive comparisons to Outer Wilds or Tunic Munich or Obra Dinn, and yes, those games are very related in a lot of ways, but Blueprints is even more cryptic than that. At its surface, it is a simple game. There are people who can reach Room 46 within 10 days of playing the game, but there is so much more. I feel like reaching those credits is almost like the tutorial of the game. And because it's your personal journey, you can decide for yourself just how much of this rabbit hole do you want to dive deep into. Reaching the credits is a perfectly fine way to capstone the game. I would imagine that most of the raving reviews that this game has received critically is because all of those critics and reviewers had to beat the game to talk about it. Because of that, these people know how rewarding the game can be. If you look at these reviews, yes, they talk about frustrations, but they also talk about the immense joys that come about when you are so neck deep in a game like this, that's atmospheric, that's bold, that's pushing the visuals in an interesting new way. There is nothing like Blueprints. You've played puzzle games and you've played roguelikes, but this beautiful combination of the two is just something else. So take your time. Feel free to take breaks. You might find your best ideas with a little bit of distance. You might find even better ideas by synthesizing with a friend near you. And remember, no puzzle is truly necessary. Knowing what to bounce off of and what to invest yourself fully in is a huge part of your own personal enjoyment with this game. So be bold, my fellow drafters, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know what your favorite room in Blueprints is, provided it's not a spoiler. This video was really for the people who tried the game and felt frustrated, but know that there's gotta be something a little bit more to it, and I hope that that resonates with you, my fellow scouts. I'll see you around the camp. I'm Scoutmaster Demi.